This is a quick demonstration on performing CT tests with the PowerMaster 3 series. We can basically do two types of tests with the 3 series. We can do a CT ratio test where we will measure the secondary current with our duckbill probes, and we will measure the primary current in this test with the 752 probes. We can also do a CT burden measurement, which is kind of new in the industry. We're going to see if the burden on the secondary of the CTs is actually within the nameplate value that the CT says it needs to be accurate. And how we're going to do that is, once again, we're going to measure the secondary current with the duckbill probes, and we're going to measure current with our we're going to measure voltage right at the secondary of the CT. So we can get the voltage drop across the secondary of the CT, we get the secondary current going through the CT, hence we can calculate the burden on that CT. So we're going to go ahead with the test right now. If we look at our connections on the 3 series itself, you have your multi-pin voltage connector, you have your 4mm locking banana plugs for your direct current, and we're using a probe adapter cable that will connect to the 752 probes right down there. The first thing we're going to do, this uses the exact same firmware that the 7 series uses. So we're going to select a site, and when we do that, it will let us create a new site, which is F2. Okay, so the only fields we actually have to enter in are the site ID. I'm just going to pick a number here. I'll call it site number 2. And then the other things we have to do are tell it what meter form we're at. This is actually a form 9, so I'll just hit the number 9 button. You'll see the default there is a 4-wire Y on the service type. And also for our test setup, I've actually created one that is basically for CT testing only. That's going to be our CT burden measurement and our CT ratio test. And then I can hit the function key for save and select, which will take me directly into the testing scenario for that CT. You can enter your technician name, F6 to continue, and we're going to go right into our integrated site test, which is number 2. It shows us what that setup is. We're not doing a customer load meter test, although we could if we wanted to. We're going to do a CT ratio test and a CT burden measurement. So we'll hit F6 for next. It goes out and looks at our probes, says required probes are detected, also shows us a wiring diagram, and we'll hit F6 to continue. The first test it's going to do is the CT ratio test. So phase A passed at 0.07% ratio error. Phase B was basically 0.2%, and phase C is going to be 0.04%. So all those are within specification. You can actually look at the graphs as well and see where they're plotted on the IEEE parallelogram. And if we want to do our CT burden measurement, we can press F6 for next test, or if we wanted to, we could just stop right there and just stick with the burden ratio test only. Once again, let's go out and look at the probes again. I'll hit F1 to start the burden measurement. Once again, it'll show us the voltage across the secondary of the CT, the amps going through that CT, and then it will calculate the burden. So when that's done, we'll hit F1 to stop, and then F6 to save, and that is the entire CT test. Thank you very much.